Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. DC's Ward 8 community was rocked last week by the arrest of council member Trayon White. While the legal drama plays out in the coming weeks and months, there are lots of questions and uncertainty within the community. A town hall meeting is taking place tonight calling for hope and healing for Ward 8. My guests are Attorney Malik, Shabazz, Iman Akbar, and Stephen Hall, all of them part of the Black Men's Movement. Gentlemen, thank you so much for entertaining me with a few moments as we talk about this really important conversation. Before I get started, I need to just kind of explain to our listeners exactly what's going on for those who may not know. And of course, Trayon White, he represents Ward 8 in the district, what we call east of the river. He was arrested by the FBI on August 18th. He is accused of taking some $15,000 in bribes, allegedly to help steer government contracts. And I'm sorry, that's more than $155,000 in bribes. That's the accusation, to help steer government contracts. He is born and raised in Southeast. He's been on the DC Council since 2017. And just last week, the council chair, Phil Mendelson, said that he is looking into disciplinary actions, including a reprimand, censure, expulsion. And on September 17th, when the DC Council returns from summer recess, the council will take action to remove him as chair of the committee that he oversees regarding youth services. Let me start with you, Attorney Shabazz. Last week, you and others called for this meeting in Ward 8 at the Arc on Mississippi Avenue. Why call this meeting?
Because we have to be proactive. The arrest of Councilmember Trayon White, which is a tragedy for everybody, furthers the crisis that we are in Washington, D.C. As a Black community. We're in crisis. We're in crisis with crime and violence, in crisis with gentrification and depopulation, and we're in a crisis in leadership. And so with this tragic arrest of Mr. White, we're having our town hall meeting and engaging in further action to let our community know that as lawyers, as Black men and organizers, that we don't intend to just allow things to happen. We intend to be proactive so that we can organize and protect our community and not be destroyed by these destabilizing actions. We have to be active if we're going to not go into further crisis.
Mm-hmm. And let me say also at the very beginning of this conversation, Councilmember White is presumed innocent until proven guilty. We have to be really clear about that. He enjoys the same rights as any person who is accused of a crime, felony, misdemeanor, politics, violence. He is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Now with that said, Imam Akbar, talk to me about your thoughts about these allegations and how this has impacted the community.
As an Islamic chaplain in the city of Washington, D.C., and service in many within and without corrections, for over 50 years, we've seen so much happen within D.C. government. And then it's the nature of the allegations when Dr. Malik, Zulu, Shabazz, myself, others within the Alliance, etc., have worked directly with the youth and youth programs, have launched successful youth programs, specifically in Ward 8, specifically directed to aid and assist the Black youth. And so directly I take, the antennas are raised once the allegation goes out, and then we have to do, again, preliminary investigation from the perspective of the community, from the
Mm-hmm.
perspective of the Black men's movement, which is gaining momentum throughout the Black community, especially in Southeast. So there are grave concerns about having good leadership in Ward 8 in the legacy and spirit of the Honorable Marion Barrett, who was both a political scientist as well as a chemical scientist. Yes, sir. We have to look at some of
So,
these measures scientifically. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I want to agree with you with my host that they are allegations, but they are such serious allegations they impact the election. They must understand that Mr. White has won the Democratic primary and is on schedule to win the November election had he not been arrested. But now that he's been arrested and indicted, Ward 8 faces a situation where they will have to elect an indicted councilman and one who may have to plead guilty and give up the seat. And so the reality is that even though there's just a probable cause and there's serious allegations in the affidavit for probable cause, that the whole political seat is now it's up for grabs, and the future of Ward 8 is up for grabs at this point in time, and that's the reality. That's the tragic reality of what we face. That Ward 8 must decide its political future, whether they're going to go with Trayon White. He's done a lot of good deeds. We want to be clear. He's done a lot of good deeds, but he's also indicted, and there's some serious evidence on the table against Mr. White.
yeah.
And so the city must, and the city has a vested interest in Ward 8 maintaining strong, stable Black leadership.
Mhm. Yeah, without a doubt. And I want to come back to you about some of those charges. But let me go to Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall, you're a resident, of course, of Ward 8. What do you believe is your biggest concern in the wake of the arrest of Council Member White? When you think about all that has happened over the past week or so, what concerns you the most?
Well, it's very simple. The welfare of the community, the welfare of the children, neighborhood
Mm,
safety is at the center core. There's a spoke in the wheel, and the wheel cannot hold if there's not enough leadership, as Attorney Shabazz and Brother Akbar had mentioned. It's the welfare of the community. What has happened to Councilmember Trayon White is one thing, and there's motives for that. And they say it could be greed, it could be image, it could be a number of reasons why people take bribes. And there seems to be an epidemic of bribe taking. And I think it's quite contagious in our community among politicians. But my concern is the welfare of the children, the welfare of the community, the safety of the community has to come first. And this is a smoke in the wheel. There's a disruption. If there's progress has been made, then it seems to have a taint on the momentum. And my concern is how do we bring accountability, leadership, community input? When the last time there's been a community town hall meeting to bring the voices of the community and our concern about trash in the street, gun violence, and the children? And I think that we must not lose sight of the core here, the community welfare is why I'm
hmm
concerned. And that's when I talked to Minister Haru and Attorney Shabazz. We collaborated. I told him my concern is it's an image here in this ontological addiction. I want everybody to study that. That's what's happening. Narcissism, self-centered, and self-serving is
What
an
do you mean by
epidemic.
that? What do you mean by that, Mr. Hall?
The image of how we see ourselves, independent of the whole and not part of the whole, and not acting toward the interests of the whole, but acting selfishly for our own personal gains.
Hmm.
That is an addiction. Is not a substance abuse addiction. Is not an alcohol addiction. It is a self-abuse addiction that's plenty in our community, and we must put an end, create some accountability and create systems that we now govern by the community terms, not the politician terms.
You know, Iman Akbar, you mentioned the late mayor and council member Marion Barry, and we all know what he has done during his lifetime for the city, and he also had his legal issues. Of course, you know, Trayon White representing Ward 8 after the passing of Marion Barry. But do you think it's a fair comparison when you look at the two men and some of the difficulties that they are having or had?
I think the expectations of the Honorable Marion Barry from the grave, I think he would be full of disappointment. And there have been some forward actions in Ward 8 that I know he would have never approved of. But nevertheless, the citizens, the blindsidedness of the citizens that support some of these efforts, in fact, publicly and privately. So we have always been in strong support of the efforts of a man the caliber of Honorable Marion Barry. And then we look at the actions or lack of actions of a Trayon White. So we want to hear from him. We're hoping that he actually shows up to give clarity to the community. The community is appealing for closure. And this is not an attack on Trayon White. We want to be very clear on that.
Thank you.
An appeal for leadership within the community to show what we can produce. And people underestimate the politics of Ward 8 and know that, yes, they are high caliber politicians and political ambitions within Ward 8. So I definitely don't discount Ward 8 as an equal player in the politics of Washington, D.C.
It was suffice it to say, anyone who underestimates the politics of Ward 8 does so at their own peril. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and finish.
Absolutely. As a former Ward 8 resident and council candidate many years ago, I testified to the diligence of brothers and sisters in Ward 8 as their politics. Now, as a direct comparison between the mayor and current councilman Trayon White, who is one of the students of Marion Barry, as there are many of us, there has always been there's always a conspiracy to see if a black politician in Washington, D.C. or anywhere in the country is susceptible to committing any type of crime that could take them out of office. They're always targeting us. Let's be clear. I think the question here is, to what capacity does the official who's being targeted, how culpable is he to participate in such a conspiracy? Marion Barry was sought after for many, many years by Joseph Divinity and many others. And finally, he was caught on a drug charge in the Vista Hotel, which was unfortunate. And he happened to have been culpable enough to be caught there. One thing we can say about former Mayor Marion Barry is that he was never accused, with all the power he had, he was never accused of taking any money or funds in order to exchange many of the contracts that he made many millionaires. Marion Barry made many millionaires, and he was never charged, though he was wiretapped down to the bone, never charged with trying to get kickbacks from that. Mr. White has done many good deeds like Mr. Marion Barry. The trouble in his situation is two things. Number one, the person who was the government informant that's trying to get the contracts that had been previously booted out of the DC government was a known defrauder of the anti-violent contracts, meaning that this person had defrauded the district government in terms of anti-violence contracts. And the troubling part about it is, it seems that Mr. White was trying to work with him so he could get $5.6 million in further contracts.
Hold that point. Don't forget your point, because I've got to take a really short break and I want you to finish your point on the other side. Don't forget, you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our discussion about tonight's Ward 8 Town Hall meeting in the wake of the arrest of D.C. Council member Trayon White. My guests are attorney Malik Shabazz, Imam Akbar with the Black Men's Movement, also Stephen Hall with the Black Men's Movement, attorney Shabazz is with the Black Men's Movement. Before the break, Attorney Shabazz, you were talking about some of the difficulties of the allegations against Councilmember Trayon White. Please continue.
Yeah, okay. So the most concerning parts about his arrest and indictment are that the government informant who was wiretapping and recording Mr. White is a person that was previously well known as having defrauded the district government's anti-violence funding through submitting false paperwork, and therefore he was put out of doing business with the district. And then he was also, according to what we read, was violated the payroll protection program and was subject to criminal charges based on these two incidents, and therefore turned informant, I guess, to get out of criminal sentencing. Okay, and the troubling part that we have, if this, what we read in the affidavit is true, is that Mr. White was willing to do business with somebody that had previously defrauded the district government and trying to get him $5.6 million in new anti-violence contracts. The problem with that is that if that would have been successful, there would have been a person that is over the much needed services, much needed anti-violence services, much needed services we need, a person that was known to going to commit fraud and not use the money for the benefit of the people. And that would have been tragic for the district. Okay, so we're making the point here that one reason we're holding this meeting is that we want to say that all funds that are in the district or anywhere that's used to stop the violence or mental health and to clean up our people, those funds should go to the people, and they must go to the people. And the reason why some of these programs are not working is because there's some fraud behind it. Now, and the other troubling point with Mr. White, as alleged, is that he was willing to take some funds in order to secure those contracts. And I would have to say that it's tragic that to see a young, promising politician career possibly ended over $35,000 in cash and possibly $156,000 later. That's tragic. Now, the legal experts and I say that, there's some questions on whether everything that is in this indictment is what's called an official act for the purposes of bribery. But it appears to be that telling whatever agency head, which is confidential in the affidavit, telling the agency head that if you want my support to maintain your agency head, I'm assuming they're talking about the DYRS head, that if you want to maintain it, I'm one of 13 members that will not be voting for you. That seems to be using an official act. But other things that they say that Mr. White did, arranging meetings for this informant or businessman, may not be official acts. So at one point he may go to trial, and he may go to trial, or he may not, or he may be found guilty or not. But right now, the political, as an indicted councilman, the political situation is in peril, and we have to look out for the best interest of the Black community.
Let me ask you all this. I'll start with you, Mr. Hall. Let's zoom out for a moment, all the way out to the impact of not only this, but also, as you know, our former ANC Commissioner Clayton Rosenberg was sentenced to 5 years in prison for wire fraud. And the biggest, during this really, really important political year, that there's a lot of discussion about DC statehood. But you may have others who are on the outside looking in who are essentially say, well, hey, look, Rosenberg is in prison. You've got a council member who is indicted. And once again, could that be used as another reason not to seriously look at statehood? Mr. Hall, we may have to try to get him back. Imam Akbar.
Yes, DC has looked at statehood from the time of the early days of the career of Eleanor Holmes Norton, the Senate representative, and they have been unilaterally just denied. There's been no real serious advocate from the Senate or the congressional level, and certainly no president has addressed it properly. So therefore, there's been very little to no support in the way of making monumental gains for the idealism of statehood. And therefore, we rest at the GOP as they got in power. One of the very first things they did was to nullify the vote of the seat of Eleanor Holmes Norton. And by people being a little non-political, they tend to think that DC is a state. They'll go DMV. Well, they're really talking about Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia because of the fact that DC is absolutely not a state. So given the political backdrop, there's little power that has been ushered in the way of giving DC visibility, or again, giving DC a vote on the issues that are of concern to the citizens. And they took away many of the support networks influencing the vocational trades, for instance, or taking away the home economics for as a program. They saw DC make the monumental gains, and a young person in high school level, junior high, could have 2 or 3 trades a few years ago. And now they maybe are classing that same person as a Dulles crown in the box. So
Well, but Imam, if I may, I'm talking about the broader optics here. Certainly we could, really kind of get down into the weeds, but I'm just talking about those people who have worked, as you said, diligently not to give DC statehood. And then we are in a new political year. And, there are, as you both know, there are forces out there that will look at anything not to give DC statehood, whether it has to do with public safety, whether it has to do with corruption. And that's what I'm talking about. Do these optics, Imam, cause more problems for DC as it continues to slowly, step by step, try to obtain statehood?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm over 70 years old. I've been monitoring presidents from Truman, Eisenhower, basically to this hour. You saw Ronald Reagan. You saw the Bush, the Clintons, Bush, as well as the Obamas. I think they more leaned on the Obamas and Clintons to give a nod or to give some public statement on statehood that would be effective, and they have all treated the issue the very same across. There's not an ink stain in Washington, D.C. right now for us, especially for the Black community, but again, for D.C. as a state. And we are leaning towards getting Bannekerville as a state, getting it some things changed, because Washington was not the starry crown that everybody has alluded to. So there are many political ambitions in Washington that have gone unattended. We are at the point of criminal neglect now by all offices. And
Attorney Shabazz.
Let me say one thing
criminal
here.
neglect would
The
put it in a
allegations.
proper perspective.
Yes, sir. But let me chime in here and say that the allegations against the indictment and the charges against Trayon White, to me, do not at this point harm the district's aspirations for statehood. Simply because Muriel Bowser is the leader of the city, and she has a certain leadership respect with the Congress, and she's pretty much got the district in the best position that it could be in if it ever were going to gain statehood. This is a nasty mark on the district, but it depends on how Ward 8 and the district handles this situation. and depends on how much it will weigh on statehood. I believe that this is an opportunity for the district and for everybody to say that that violence is a problem, and that violence amongst our youth is a problem, and that we're serious that every dollar that's coming in on a state and federal level actually reach the streets and reach the kids and reach these goals that they're trying to get to. I mean, if we take that kind of proactive position, that if you're doing contracts in the district, there's no corruption or bribery, and that you must do the services and you must help the youth and reach the goals of your human care agreement, then I think this could be a step forward rather than backwards.
Let me ask you this, Attorney Shabazz. This town hall was called specifically to address healing. From your perspective, even as the wounds keep coming, this is a very active moving target regarding Councilmember White. Eventually, what do you believe healing for Ward 8 would look like?
Okay, healing begins with communication. It begins even with forms of therapy. I mean, now when you have a young man that represents really the youth of this city and is looked up to by the youth of this city, specifically of his ward, and won his ward with a mandate and has a record of doing many positive deeds, that can be mentally and emotionally traumatic as well as politically traumatic. So our forum and our future forums is designed so that the community can come together to understand, to share their positions, to cry, to hug, to heal, and to plan forward, instead of just being in a confused vacuum where anything is happening. And so healing comes with coming together and dialoguing, and if necessary, atonement or confession. And by all means, not tearing each other apart about where the future of that ward goes. And so yeah, we must come together, whether you are a hardline Trayon White supporter that says that you don't believe anything against him, he's a victim of a conspiracy, hands off Trayon White, or if you're on the other end and saying he let us down, he should have never been taking money out the paper bag. We're all one Black family, and we're in a community that's in crisis in Washington, D.C. So that's why we're at the ARC, and that's why Black Men Movement and Attorney Shabazz is saying let's come together to talk, to therapy, to heal, and to plan, because we cannot go backwards. We got to go forward.
Imam, talk to me about what you believe could come out of this, because Attorney Shabazz said something really important at the beginning of the conversation, that Trayon White, he won the primary. He's on the ballot in November for re-election. Prior to this, he had no serious opposition from the Republican side, but now we're in a position where you have some people who are going to be running as a write-in candidate. No matter who you decide to vote for, do you believe that this incident with Councilmember White be a motivating factor to get more people to exercise their right to vote in Ward 8?
Well, I believe the situation now is entirely in the hands of we the people, the voters of Ward 8 are definitely at the test. And now, how are we going to behave in the face of an opportunity to manage our politics for ourselves? It's been the advice of the Honorable Haji Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, of the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to manage the justice, the peace, the wisdom, the knowledge, to manage the affairs. Even told us to take our economics in our own hands. But now we must take the politics of Ward 8 and manage it for ourselves. I am a resident of Ward 8, and I'm a long time I'm a member of the Concerned Citizens, as well as the Black Man's Movement and the I think the conference tonight at the Mississippi location there at the ARC, a beautiful theater, and again, the mindset of those that were wise, as Marion Barry, and wise as Corps Master Barry, put the tennis and put the theater right there where the citizens can become involved in the great aspirations of the city to build infrastructure and to get momentum. And this is what we must do as citizens. It's the responsibility of every citizen to manage the politics with your own hands. Again, the instructions directly from Dr. King, directly from Malcolm X, directly from Fannie Lou Hamer, Barbara Jordan, Shirley Chisholm, all of those great ones, including Eleanor Holmes Norton, and may the blessings and peace be upon our beloved sister from Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee, and others that were inspired who were slain in the person of Ron Brown, in the person of our
So, but
beloved brother
but Iman,
Mickey Lee.
I don't want to get lost in my question. My question simply was, this is a crisis in Ward 8, okay? And you and I are old enough to know the importance of all of those people. But Ward 8 has a lot of young people there who may not necessarily be civically active, but are eligible to vote. And my question is, does this crisis, do you believe it has the ability to activate those people who otherwise would not vote for DC Council to do so?
Yes, I believe it has activated and motivated many potentially new voters of Ward 8 to bring about a difference. I think when you do things differently, you get different results. And I think that many of them are self-determined to do things differently in Ward 8, and many of them are getting different results. And I think it will be an increase. I think we're in store for a great surprise come September.
Attorney
confident.
Shabazz?
My two
Very
cents.
confident.
Whoops.
Thank you. Well,
Attorney Shabazz, I think we lost you. We'll pick you back up when you come in. Mr. Hall, you came back. Thank you so much. We were able to get you back. What impact do you believe this crisis will have on voters in Ward 8? Because as you know, and as I mentioned before we lost you, Trayon White won the primary. He's on the ballot for November 5th. He could, if he wins, but the DC Council removes him in December, there's going to be the need for a special election.
Well, I think, again, the welfare of the community, the welfare and safety of the community must come to the center. The leadership drives that community to, the influencers, the political drivers, there's the political beneficiaries of it. We must debrief. If we're going to increase voter participation, we must have town hall meetings in teach-ins, like in the 60s, after, vocals. Just let me give you a tidbit right quick.
Go ahead.
Under the mayor's office for neighborhood safety and youth development, right? There's only $150,000 of grant money, and they gave it to 30 small organizations. What can $150,000 do to put a bite into the crime in the literacy in our community? That's an insult. Then they got these other big pots of money under the request for application. Now, it used to be called request for proposal, the 5.2 million that you don't even hear about. So they only gave tokens to the community, $150,000, $5,000 grant, mini grants. What can an organization do with a mini grant?
I remember that.
I think I want to say this.
Yeah, go ahead, Attorney Shabazz.
Okay, I want to say that the future, if you're asking the question about will this crisis with Councilman White lead to greater participation by young people in Ward 8, I think we're going to get a determiner tonight. And I think it depends on Ward 8. Now, Ward 8 is usually known for running a lot of candidates in a crisis like this. If a crisis like this happens, 40 people will come out and say, I'm the new write-in candidate, and you have factions and confusion. What we're praying that Ward 8 does tonight is that they move away from factionalism and the different groups and entities come together to come with a remedy to this crisis. They may come together tonight and say that Trayon White is the modern Marion Barry, and we're going to back him despite these charges, and we're going to back him in November, and we're going with him all the way, all the way. Even though I haven't heard Trayon White or his attorneys come out and say that this is all a conspiracy, it's all entrapment. They could say that. Or they could say the Trayon White people could come together with the other people. I think Councilman Sam Adolfo people, ANC brother Adolfo, and there's another man talking about running for write-in. If these factions can get together and say, factionalism has never benefited Ward 8. And today, us as organizers, we're gonna stay in the tank and stay in the room, and we're gonna fight forward in November with a new vision. I believe that all this attention that's coming around the indictment would fire up this ward, fire up the young people, and there could not only be increased voter turnout, that this could be a blessing for the ward rather than a step back towards factionalism and fighting. We'll see. I do know that we just can't sit around in a vacuum and let it happen, that we as attorneys and as the Black Men's Movement, we believe we got to be proactive in giving the community a voice and organizing them so that we can keep moving towards self-determination, because self-determination is what we want.
How can you, Mr. Hall, how can one prevent this town hall and maybe future town halls surrounding this issue? How can they be prevented from, devolving into gripe sessions?
Well, again, the community must come together to create the terms of engagement, not the politician. So the community has voices, Attorney Malik said. If we are just relying on the leaders to have the voice and create the terms, then the community is left out. It becomes a stepchild to the political process. The community must continuously engage, and that has not happened in Ward 8. After they engaged during the election, the campaigning, then once the incumbent or the new that's elected goes in office, you hear nothing about briefings about where's the funding that community should be going after. When is the community interest, childhood interest, the children's interest going to be at the heart of the wheel? And if we don't engage in that activism, as Attorney Malik is saying, teaching, debriefing, we got mental health, we got post-traumatic slavery disorder that's impacting the image and it continuously passed down from generation to generation. We don't have the terms of all engagement. They must be from the community, not the politicians.
I only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to wrap this up with a comment from each of you. I'll start with Imam Akbar. When you're looking, beyond tonight's town hall, just share a few thoughts about just trying to address this issue in Ward 8.
Well, from my heart, I would just make an appeal to every citizen in Ward 8, and especially to all of the voters and the participating active voters that get up and go to the polls, to go out and make a difference. Come this November, do your write-in strong. Or if you support Trayon White, then support him strongly all the way, like I say, to the gallows. But if you are looking for new, fresh bread, then I suggest that you get with the new, fresh bread and support that leadership strongly so we can be solid citizens once again in Ward 8. Thank you so much.
Mr. Hall, a final word from you.
Thank
you. I think the community needs to move toward thriving beyond just surviving, and that hopefully this town meeting will help the community become fully alive and engaging and finding the community deep fire. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're going to be pulling out. For the community, we need exceptional well-being. We need to incite enthusiasm and,
Yeah.
and living in a great total spirit in the interest of the community and the children. It's ironic that the council member was heading neighborhood safety and crime initiative, but then you get caught around the hot dog stand eating a hot dog, to staying around it too long. And we have to have the sweet self-acceptance, yes.
Okay.
But we need to find ways every day. Ward 8 needs to wake up with a sense of purpose and mission. The community must be in the center of the wheel.
Okay. Final word from you, Attorney Shabazz.
To those that are listening, brothers and sisters, that there is hope. Despite tragedy, there is hope. Our number is 202-997-8909.
One more time, please.
202-997-8909. On behalf of Black Lawyers for Justice and the Black Men's Movement, we're saying that we must take a proactive stance. We're organizing right now to make sure that our community does not descend into chaos, and we're being proactive. Contact us right now, especially the men, because the young men need the men. And we're going to we are very active in deciding the future affairs of our community. We oppose gentrification. We are against the continued destruction of our population in this city. We're against the increase in crime and violence, and we plan to plan a new way. So if you contact us, you will see that there is hope in gaining control and turning this situation around. And we thank you for giving us this forum. Thank you.
On all returns.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you taking times out of your schedules. Just a reminder, this town hall meeting goes until 10 o'clock tonight. It is at the Arc in the 1900 block of Mississippi Avenue Southeast. Again, it's going on until 10 o'clock. Certainly, if you attend, bring your thinking caps, because there is a lot to consider. Gentlemen, again, thank you so much. That is the Daily Drum for this Monday, August 26th. I'm Harold